today.
Oh man, yeah.
So I think it's just the two of us. So have fun. I will be your room of 30 coaches.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do any introduction or just kind of get in?
I don't think you need to. You can just assume, like, your introduction can be assuming that you've just done the Administrative Mastery, and you're just going to kind of transition into honoring the game.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Great.
All right.
So whenever you're ready.
Cool. We'll start.
Go for it.
Cool. Well, the next principle is honoring the game, which is something I'm probably most passionate about when it comes to sports. Being the kid who still looks up to my kindergarten PE teacher who taught me everything I know. I think sports much more than just sport, and it really is about teaching those life values. But I want to take a minute just to have you kind of share with me what the word integrity means to you. So when you hear the word integrity, like what comes to mind?
I think of just doing the right thing at the right time, making the right decision.
Okay. Yeah. And do you have any examples of other games you've coached or games you've watched or players that you can think of that really like embody that for you, or moments that you've had where you feel like?
Yeah, I had one this season that was really funny. I coached lacrosse, and it's the first year. These girls are 10 years old, and this is the first year that they actually there's a restraining line, so the girls can be offside. So defense has to stay. They have to keep 4 people back on defense. They can't pass a certain part on the field. So there's a restraining line. And so this is a big concept for these girls to understand, because they're usually running all over the field. And just to explain to them like what offsides actually means is really confusing. So I told the girls, I said, it's really important that we always have 4 defenders back, because if somebody scores a goal and you're offsides, they'll actually take the goal back and it won't count. So I'm always really, kind of harping on them, like, just be careful about offsides. And I had one little girl, she's so sweet, and her name's Fiona. And we scored a goal. And she came running right over to the ref, and she's like, I was offsides. I'm so sorry. That goal shouldn't count. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like the ref wasn't even, not that I was trying to get away with it, but it was an opportunity where the ref wasn't really watching. She was offsides by like 1 foot. And she was like, ref, stop. It's not a goal. I was offsides. But I just, at the moment, I felt like saying, don't worry about it. They didn't see it. And on the other hand, I was thinking, you know what, this is a really good teachable moment, where there's a player that actually admitted that she made a mistake. She was offsides and the goal shouldn't have counted. And the ref was actually great. The ref came over and said, oh, thank you so much for letting me know. But I think for this point, it was okay because you were all the way over the other side of the field. Next time I'll be pay more attention to that. Yeah. So I actually said to my team, like, how great was that? Wasn't that great that Fiona admitted that? And my team was like, no, we wanted the goal. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, that was my next question, was how do you handle that with the team?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I didn't realize my camera was off. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just talking.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I just talked to them about it, about why was that so great that Fiona said that? Why was that something that we want to do in all areas of the game? And how will the ref respect us more if we actually, help them out? There's one referee and there's, all this stuff going on. And they actually understood it. But at the time they were like, what are you doing? That's a goal. Yeah. Why would you take that back?
No, those moments are really good. It's that's a good example to have in mind for this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I think when I think of integrity, I think of, there's a few different sports teams too. But I think of the New Zealand All Blacks, which I don't know if you know much about the All Blacks.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yep.
Rugby team, I think it's probably the most winning team in the history of sports at this point.
Yeah, I think so.
100 years, I think. But they have this philosophy where they kind of have this motto where it's better men make better All Blacks, which is a lot like better athletes, better people to me. And it's something that they do. It's when they put their jersey on, it's like they are representing not just themselves, but the history of every other person that's worn that number. And they're taught to kind of act with integrity, play with integrity. When they put that jersey on, it's more than a game. And it's like a super powerful, if you ever watch an All Blacks, they have a ton of videos and documentaries and things like that. And it's just powerful to watch and to understand like what they're doing is truly, it's honoring the game. They do a ceremony at the beginning of every game where they honor their opponents and they honor the refs and they honor the history of their country and their game. And it's just like honoring the game is so powerful, and it's really motivating to watch and to see. And it really is about, them on the field and off. So that's what I think of when I think of integrity and honoring the game. And this idea that it's not just for fun, like pressure is a privilege to them, and it's still about winning, but it really is about kind of that honor. And I think something else to keep in mind, and we've talked about this a little bit with the Tree of Mastery and filling e-tanks and things like that, is that, you know, it's things that you can control and that an athlete can really like take action on and control. And honoring the game is, to me, it's actually the one thing that a player has control over. Is you don't have control over the ref. We've talked about that. You don't have control over, you know, the weather. You don't have control over your opponents, anything else, and you have the control over how you react to it. And that's super important. I think that's honoring the game, is taking control over how you're reacting to everything around you as a coach and as a player. And it sounds like your players did that. Your player did that pretty well. Fiona she was owning it and really like taking control over what she knew. And so it's about teaching that same sense of integrity in everything that they're doing on the field. And as a retired athlete, this is harder to articulate to players at the time, but you know, I know from my own experience is that leaving the game, any game that you play, 20 years from now, when your athletes are older, they're not going to necessarily remember the trophies that they won, but if they know that they left the game and they can feel really good about how they played it, that's the takeaway. It's about leaving, and you know, we talked as coaches about leaving your legacy and how you build your legacy as a coach. And it's really important to model that so that your players can leave their own legacy. And that's the power of honoring the game, is figuring out how to teach players not just what championships they want to win, but how they want to be doing it, and what that legacy is for your team and for each individual player, I think, is part of honoring the game. And it sounds like you've done some great work with your little lacrosse players in doing that too, so that they can leave the sport and have those values really instilled, which is awesome.
One of them anyway.
But as long as it's a teachable moment for everyone, they'll at least in the back of their minds at some point when they have a hard decision, they'll remember that in some way. Like, oh yeah,
right,
probably.
There you go.
That's what we can hope for as coaches. It's like making them think a little bit.
Right.
So I'm going to share a story. I don't share too many stories about my own experience, but there's like one defining moment in my life, and it is honoring the game, and it was something that has shaped me on the field and off. And so it's a story I just want to share with you and kind of shape the discussion that we can have after it about what honoring the game really means. So we'll move on to the next slide. And just to give you a sense what honoring the game is it's honoring your rules, honoring your opponents, honoring your officials, your teammates, and yourself, which is everything that your example provided too, right? You want your opponents to win the right way or lose the right way. You want the officials to make the right call. You want to make sure that you're within your own integrity of like playing by the rules, and that you're kind of your example of your teammates and everyone kind of supporting each other in those right decisions. For me, what happened was, so I was on the U.S. ski team, and to make the U.S. ski team, there's essentially three ways you can make the U.S. ski team. It's 3 different races throughout the season. And I went into my last ever ski race, what I thought was going to be my last ever ski race. I went in to go have fun, like say goodbye to all my friends that I had skied with for years and years and years. This race I had never cracked the top 16 of. Like it wasn't in the cards for me. And I kind of had I'd succumbed to it. I was like ready to say my goodbyes. My best friend at the time was slated to win, actually. She was like #1 favorited to win this whole event. And so I was just there. I was like pumped to see her win and go on to do great things. And I think I was in the right mindset of that kind of growth mindset and having fun and having a good time. And it ended up going really well for me. I ended up winning the ski race. And my best friend ended up coming in 3rd, which means that I got the spot on the ski team and she didn't get the spot on the ski team.
Oh.
So tough decision, but it only gets harder. So we went on to ski the whole year. We went back and forth in ski races, and it was one of those things where I woke up every morning and I put on this red, white, and blue uniform that I was just like pumped. It was, you know, it's like your be all end all of an athlete. It was like
Mm-hmm.
every day I woke up, I was like, this is it. This is my dream. And every day she woke up and she put on her regional uniform, and, you know, we were still best friends all season. We'd hang out off the ski hill all the time. You know, she was the person I confided in when I was nervous, and likewise. And I just, the power of watching her handle that with such grace was incredible. And is something that not many people can do. And something that she was gracious and wonderful. And, you know, we continue to be best friends. It came down to our very last ski race of the year. And this was the second opportunity to make the ski team. So I had already requalified for the team for the next year, given results for the season, and she hadn't yet. And it came down to one race, the two of us going head to head against each other. And I had coaches from other countries walking up to me and telling me I should tank the race. My own coaches stopped coaching me for the day because they knew how much promise she had as an athlete and that we were best friends. And I think, like, ultimately everyone kind of wanted her success. But my coaches were backing off of me because they didn't really know how to handle it. You know, I had judges. It's a judge sport. So we have judges who, there's a lot of name recognition and a lot of, like, they want certain athletes to succeed. We're all human. We all make mistakes, and we all have these ideas. So it came down to one chairlift ride, and it was the two of us on the chairlift together going up to our final race of the season. And it was the defining moment of, next season we could be teammates and best friends and ski together, or I could win and she could still not have reached her dream. And it was like one of the most difficult 15 minutes of my life, riding up that chairlift with her, and we kind of rode in silence. And at the end of the chairlift ride, we both kind of looked at each other and nodded. And that was like our moment of recognition that, like, what happens on the ski hill is on the ski hill, and what happens off the ski hill is off the ski hill. And I don't want to win the wrong way, and I don't want to lose the wrong way, and you don't want to win the wrong way or lose the wrong way. And, like, we kind of gave each other the space and the recognition that, like, we're honoring each other. Whatever happens, happens. Like, this is it. We went on to ski our worst ever ski races. Each of us fell at least 3 times. Like, it was truly like that moment of, like, if you're mentally not in the game and you're not, like, doing it with full integrity, and you're not doing it with full passion, like, mental performance was, like, shot. We thought there was a false start. So she make up the hill, and I just kept skiing. We found out 15 years later that there was a false start, but that the starter didn't fess up to it. So I ended up winning the race, and she didn't end up making the ski team. But we ended in this, like, big, like, tear-filled hug in the finish line. The coaches from all the countries were just, like, shaking their heads at us and just didn't know how to react, because I think secretly they all kind of knew I shouldn't have thrown the race, even though they were telling me to throw the race. And about 8 years later, I actually stood at the bottom of the Olympic course in Vancouver, and I watched her ski in the Olympics, like, long after my career was over.
That's awesome.
And so to watch that and to know, like, she got there the right way. I went on to live my own life the right way, and have that, like, that moment is something that, if I can kind of help you as coaches make that happen for people, it's defined my life in every decision that I've ever made, I think, since then. And it's really what I see as a winning game. But, you know, it's if you can have that in your head of you never know what's meant to happen, just honor it and do it with integrity, and know that when you step off the field, if you can feel okay with how you left it, that's all you can hope for, and that's all your athletes can hope for. And you know, that's what we're here to do, is to make people that know how to make those hard decisions in the right way. But, you know, I think for me, obviously, it was, like, honoring the officials and honoring the coaches that was most challenging. But I'm curious for you as a coach, and, you know, lacrosse isn't necessarily a judge sport in truly subjective terms, but, you know, you have officials and there's parents and everything. But what do you find as a coach is, like, the most challenging piece of honoring the game that you've come across?
I think when I was coaching at the high school level, honoring the officials was definitely the most challenging because these were paid officials and they were supposed to be good at what they did. And for me, lacrosse, it was a matter of safety. So if the officials weren't calling certain calls that I thought were dangerous, like certain dangerous checking or plays, and they're just letting it go, it was a matter of safety. So I had a lot of trouble with that mostly. And it wasn't that I was disrespecting the officials, but I would challenge a lot of calls because I just didn't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah.
Now our officials, the officials are like, high school kids. So most of them are doing a pretty good job. So I'm very respectful of them, but that's not as much of an issue. I think the hardest thing for me is actually the opponents, which sounds funny, but like the other team that we play against, sometimes they come in like total win at all costs. And I mean, they're coaching 10-year-olds and they're, screaming at their players, or they're just running down and scoring, rather than passing the ball around. And at this level, if you've got one kid that's really, really good, they can just run down and score. And there's kind of an unwritten rule at our level that you want to teach your team to pass the ball at least twice before they score. And there's some coaches that just will do it. I have a lot of trouble with that because, I mean, even though I don't really think of it, I mean, the other coach is my opponent, so I guess it's my opponents. But I've just had to pull some coaches over. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're just going to keep doing that? You've just scored 6 goals in 3 minutes, and you're going to keep going, and no one else on your team is touching the ball, and that's how you're going to teach your players to play lacrosse. And I think sometimes I can be a little sassier than I should be with that when I have a point to make. But that's the only time I get really like riled up.
Yeah. No, that's definitely fair. I think it's tough because every coach has a different philosophy too, right? So the coach of that might have their own guiding principles and values that make up their honoring the game in a different way. So it's a challenge, and it's kind of staying your true north is tough when someone else doesn't have the same vision of what that means.
Interesting though, just real quick, I had when I did this workshop last night, I had a group of guys that said self was their most difficult for their players. And they actually had a different spin on it, which he said, my kids are so hard on themselves. And some of my best competitors are so tough on themselves that mentally they get so frustrated and angry, and they just are embarrassed and they can't believe that they've, made a mistake. So when they're winning and doing well, they're great. But as soon as they start losing, the pendulum swings. And he was asking, like, would that be considered self? Honoring yourself. So how would you respond to that? Because I thought that was a really good question.
Yeah, I think that is a really good question. I think that's like a much more prevalent thing more and more these days. Is that like fear of failure in a lot of ways. And I think that's where you come down to like helping build the culture. So kind of, what integrity means to you as a coach, but maybe it's getting ahead of it and sitting down with your team and kind of building those values of win or lose. If someone were to write a newspaper article about us tomorrow about the game, what would we want that headline to read if it wasn't about winning or losing, and helping them build those values so that when they do make a mistake, we talked about mistake rituals and ways to kind of show yourself a little compassion and I would almost say at the most basic level, talk to them about if your teammate or your best friend made that same mistake, how would you talk to them and just stop turning it on them?
That's exactly what I said. Yeah.
I think we are just built to be hard on ourselves. So
that's what I said. Negative self-talk is disrespecting yourself. And that's something that you can decide you were going to allow on your team or not allow.
Yeah.
But I thought that was the first thing he thought of, because most people think like self-respect, doing the right thing or making the right decisions. And he said, I don't think these kids respect themselves and their ability to play because they're so hard on themselves.
Yeah. And
that's a good point.
Challenge. It's so sport dependent too. So
it's true. Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, I think, we can go through a scenario. I think your scenario that you already gave of your own player, kind of attacking the line and then talking to the ref about it is a great one. And I think your scenario of talking to the other coaches on the team is another great one. So using those same scenarios kind of, if you were in a bigger group, I'd have you break into smaller groups, but,
that's good.
But kind of talking about if another coach of whether it's your same sport or a different sport, who's newer to the game came to you for advice on how to handle that situation, kind of talking through how you would advise someone that came to you and was like, oh man, like I just, like the other coaches really just get on my nerves, or don't see the game the way I do, or like, kind of, I find myself getting frustrated with them. Like, how would you share advice to another coach that came to you about that?
I think one of the things is just seeing the big picture, helping them realize that whatever, especially the sports, their coach. I'm hearing echo for some reason. I don't know why.
It might be me.
You hear an echo too?
No, but it could be mine.
Okay. No, now it's good. If you have an issue with the official, I always just talk to my team right away, because usually it's the team that's flipping out, or the parents that are flipping out. So I usually just say, okay, guys, I have a rule on my team that the referee's not always right, but they're never wrong. And that's something that I just tell my girls all the time. Not wrong. What they see is what they believe to be true. So you can't tell them that they're wrong. It's your perception versus their perception. So you're never going to win that argument. So don't even bother. And then I talked to them a little bit too about the vantage point that they have. If the refs could see things better than you could, you're on the sidelines and they're in the game. So maybe they saw something you didn't see. But I also just tell them, we've got to play our game. But I actually have to talk them through it, because even at 10, 11 years old, if they see a bad call, they'll start yelling, and the parents are behind them yelling too. So of just having to explain to them, gosh, guys, this is not worth yelling over. This is just a game, and we're just going to honor, we're going to respect the official. They're not wrong.
Yeah. It's a challenge though, right? It's, everyone's there to do well, and it's a tough balance. I think in skiing, kind of the reason that I was able to handle my difficult situations, because I had a coach when I was much younger. Is being a judge sport, it's super subjective. So it's like figure skating, basically. It's like the judges know your name, and they like your ski clothes, and they like the way your knee patches look. I mean, there's so much subjectivity to it. But I had a coach one day, there were parents in the scoring tent screaming about their kids' scores, and it would have been someone to bump me down the list. And my coach just looked at me and he said, today the judges may have blinked when that kid fell, but tomorrow they may blink when you fall, and they may not see it. And you never know what day you're going to get. But if you can feel confident and comfortable and okay with how you did today, that's all you can ask for. And it happens in professional sports too. There's, buzzer ending calls that blow the championship for a game, but you just, whatever level you're at, I think you're right. It's like helping make those teachable moments and recognize that it is part of a bigger picture, and the trophy may not be the be all end all, even though at the moment it feels like, it really is. And it is still really important, but it may not be the life-defining moment that you think it is.
Yeah.
So, and I think those lead to kind of the 3 tools that you can have in your coach's toolkit. So that's, using those narrated moments of talking your players through why you're not responding in total aggression when you have a coach screaming down the sidelines and it's getting in the ref, and really, walking them through almost thinking out loud of I'm not going to get mad. This is why I'm doing this, even if it's just so they overhear you saying it. If you're not in a moment where you can huddle them up and tell them exactly what it is, but just that process of letting them hear your thought process. The other one, I think, kind of goes back to your example of being hard on yourself. As coaches, we can do that too, and we can be really hard on ourselves. And it's that idea of a mistake ritual, but it's a moment of self-control and stress management. So for you, if that's, if you feel like you're losing that honoring the game for yourself, and you're getting heated and you're getting wrapped up into what's going on, maybe it's snapping a rubber band on your wrist, or taking a deep breath, or a walk down the sidelines. It's figuring out for you, what's that reset moment? When I feel the blood boiling and my heart rate rising, and I want to get into it, but I know I shouldn't. What's your mistake ritual? What's your reset? And a lot of the tools that we teach our athletes are things that we can use ourselves, which I think is something not to forget. And, you know, and I think that last piece is just teachable moments. Like every moment is a teachable moment if you choose to make it that. And it sounds like coaches could take many lessons from you on your teachable moments. But it's good. And I think it's, you know, it's also important for players to see us make mistakes and to talk through them, and like maybe we don't react in the right way, and to talk through that as well. And when, you know, maybe you do lose your temper, but talking through it with your player is what's going to help them realize, okay, that wasn't honoring the game. How do I do it? How do I do it in the future? How do I do it better? And using those as kind of continuous learning moments for the team as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of leading into the final piece of everything. The culmination of it all is culture and team culture, and a little bit what you were talking about with your example of the team culture where players are really hard on themselves. It's that how do you set that legacy and help your players build what they want their legacy to be, and then what does that mean in the present moment? So if you know what you want your legacy as a team to be, how do you do it? And like, what does that mean for PCA and for us? Culture is the way we do things here. And so it's, you know, taking it back to the All Blacks, acting the way they do is the way they do things here. And when you put that jersey on, it's like your trigger of this is the way we do things here. And for every team that may mean something totally different, but it's understanding and helping your players feel like they have a part and they're taking control over what that is and what that integrity means to them is super important, and it's really empowering. And I think you'll find success comes with that, and success comes with players feeling a little bit autonomous about helping build that and honoring that in themselves and in the team, and they'll start making the right decisions no matter what. So that's kind of the big piece of it. And then, you know, we'll finish with a video from Julie Foudy on positive culture and her view and her experience with many titles in the soccer world of building that positive culture.
All right, so you can pretend that showed.
Perfect. Yeah, and this kind of is the culmination of it all. So those ideas of the elm tree of mastery and filling your emotional tank and kind of creating these players that are bigger than themselves and that are no longer just better athletes, but they're better people is really, you know, if you can leave this with one sentiment or one trigger word when you feel like you're losing touch of what you're doing as a coach, or you're having those tough days, just, you know, think of that bigger picture and the key takeaways, and then, you know, kind of recapping the 3 key takeaways of why we're here and why sport is here. And that's helping kids make connections to themselves, to the players around them, to adults. It's one of the few places where they can really make cross connections amongst a lot of different people. And then, you know, that idea of constant improvement is something they can bring from sport to school to work, and that growth mindset and kind of building those positive spirals that Barbara Fredrickson talks about and that we've talked about in the mastery and focusing on what you can improve and growth mindset. And then the final piece is what we talked about just now, which is that idea of honoring the game and your integrity, and just doing what you do with passion and integrity, and with a positive mindset and attitude. It'll take you a long way. Cool.
Absolutely. All right. And then the wrap up is just kind of the resources and all that stuff, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Allie.
Yeah.
That was great. I loved it. Thank you for my personal stories. So I loved it. I thought that was perfect. It was great. As I said, you know, I was just amazed last night going through this again. Like, wow, there's just a lot here. And I think especially with honoring the game, there's not a lot of actual slides, but there's so much you can do with it. Yeah. And it is so important. And, you know, we've debated, put the principles in, and some have said this should be first because this is the foundation. And then other people, we had Elm Tree of Mastery first for the longest time. Yeah. Because we wanted people to know, the coaches to know that we were about winning and competing. And then we realized that, gosh, if a kid doesn't have a full emotional tank, there's no way they're going to honor their game or focus on mastery. So we've got to put that first. So I think it's neat that you know, finish this up by saying, yeah, this to me is the most important. And
Yeah.
I just love a lot. The New Zealand All Blacks is a great example. They're a team that most people, I think, at least have heard of.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing we just have to be careful of is workshops is saying, well, most of you guys have heard of them,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are like, I don't even know what sport they're talking about. Rugby's not a mainline sport. I don't really know it. So maybe just giving a little bit more background about, you know, are they in New Zealand? Are they in America? You know, like, where are they? Who is this team and why do they matter?
Yeah.
Just a little tip. The idea that they have a ceremony to honor, and then that's what I've heard about a lot. They actually do their officials and honor their opponents. And like, there's another USA Ultimate is another kind of a newer sport. And they actually do the same thing with their opponents. They do like an opponent circle before the game, and they go, every other person is from the opposing team, and they stand in a circle and they hold hands. And this is something that they do to honor their opponents. And I think the big point with honoring the opponents or honoring, you know, the game is a lot of coaches think, well, it's just nice to do.
Yeah.
It's just the nice thing to do. It has a lot to do with competition. You know, if you're actually recognizing and honoring your competition, you're going to take it more seriously. And, you know, getting to know the people that you're playing against and not demonizing them, it's going to actually motivate your players to work harder. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of people, when you hear honoring the game, they like kind of tune out because they're like, all right, yeah, it's sportsmanship. This is good. This is what I should do. But actually talking about the lessons that are in it and how it can lead to better performance for your team. Because it's not like kids aren't sitting there making moral decisions about, well, should I do this or should I not do it? The answer is yes. You should do the right thing every time, even if it costs you the game, even if it costs you the winning, you know, even if you're taken out of the game for some reason. So I thought that was good. I love your little words too, like pressure is a privilege. These are words that, you know, sometimes athletes just say, and coaches like, jot that stuff down all the time. They're like, oh, that's a good quote. I'll use that. You know, that's really good. Yeah. The idea that athletes can control honoring the game, that's a great point. And I never really even thought about that until you said it. I was like, that's great. They absolutely have 100% control over how they respect the game. So I thought that was awesome and perfect. I think it was a great story, just the way you told it. You know, I could actually see and feel what was going on. I was dying to know who it was, but I mean, I probably don't even know who it is. But I was like, I wonder why she chose not to tell us who it was.
I'll be okay with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's your choice, but that was like going through my head. I'm like, oh, who's she talking about? But I just think it's a great example, and it's so personal to you. And it's something that obviously left a mark. And, you know, that's a tough moral decision that you had to make. And it was cool that in the end you said, you know, 8 years later, I watched her ski and what the point I liked is when you said, and she did it the right way. So I think that was cool because I think that's a good point to make, because if you had thrown the race, she wouldn't have respected herself. Yeah. You know, she wouldn't have felt that she earned it. So I think that's almost a good point to make too. Like, all the coaches, all the judges, everybody were like, oh, come on, you should throw this race, but you chose not to. And somebody might think, well, gosh, that was kind of rude. Like, she should have thrown the race to let her friend make the team, but her friend wouldn't have wanted that. Yeah. Like, your friend wouldn't have wanted that to happen. So I thought that was really awesome. And
heart to hearts about it. So.
What'd you say?
We've had many heart to hearts about it since then.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that's something to bring up too. You know, like, in the moment, she might have been really upset. Like, maybe even at you, like, come on, give me a break. But, you know, years later, you realize, and that's the point of coaching that I like to bring up at the workshops, that in the moment, kids are going to feel exactly how they feel. It's an emotional thing. And in the moment, they might not agree with you and they might not make the right decision. And parents make emotional decisions in the moment. But we are the ones that are supposed to see the big picture. We're supposed to step back. We're supposed to be the ones that have the enough wherewithal to say, well, you know what, down the road, this is the right thing for you. And you might not understand it now, and you might not agree with it right now, but I guarantee this is the right thing to do. Yeah. And as coaches, we have to have those hard conversations, and they will come back and thank you later. So I think that was a really good point. That was a really good point to make. So I thought this was great, Allie. I think I really enjoyed this part, and I think you, which is really important. I think too many times this section of the workshop gets put into a list. You know, respect the rules, respect the opponents, respect the officials. I think the other part, when you have a big room, is to talk about respecting all these areas of the game a teachable moment for the coaches to teach the athletes. So I always bring that out, like, which one's challenging for you? But then I also say, well, what do you do on your team to show your players how to respect officials and show them how to respect themselves? And what do you do to show respect for teammates? Because a lot of these things aren't being taught anymore naturally. You know, kids aren't coming with natural respect for opponents. They're taught to hate their opponents. Yeah. So as coaches, we have to, especially in the younger years, about teaching players that this is what you do here. We respect our opponents. We show respect for officials. Well, how do you do that? Well, I ask my official to come over and greet my team before the game. And I, even if she's 14 years old, can you come over and tell the girls your name and just give them a couple tips for today? And every official is, you know, Mrs. Smith, and I'm going to be officiating today, and I really want you girls to be looking for these two things. And I'm, you know, just for them to actually put a face with a voice before the game. I mean, and then the kids always I have to take my 3 captains. They always go over and they give the official a handshake right after the game. Now, a lot of teams do that, but the fact that that's a non-negotiable on my team. Yeah. That's what you do. And I even make like the center in lacrosse, the game starts with a draw in the center. And if you play center on my team, you have to go over and shake the official's hand. You go into the center. And I actually pulled a girl out of the game one time because I watched her take 2 draws and she did not shake the official's hand the first time. And I said, introduce yourself and shake the official and thank the official for coming to the game. And I took her out of the game and she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, Mackenzie, what's our rule when you play center? And she's like, oh, I know, but I just didn't have time. I said, that's why you're sitting here. And the next girl I put in for her, I said, Fiona, thank the official. And she's like, okay. You know, so it's just, you have to make things non-negotiable. And they start to learn like, wait, I have to thank the official for being here. Isn't this her job? Yeah. But just bringing up coaches' examples of how they do that and make it intentional makes coaches go, oh, wow, I don't teach that. That's not something I practice. So I think that's really great. I'd love to get you out to a workshop as soon as possible. Cool. So I think like practicing again for me is perfectly fine if you want to, but I don't feel like you need to go through another principal with me. I would love to just, you know, make you an associate trainer so you can get out and do this at a live workshop, because there's no better practice than doing it live. And there are a lot of workshops going on right now. I don't know. Are you in Boston? Or where are you located? Yeah, I'm right in Boston. So yeah, it's okay. The schedule. I think there's one. I think I saw one maybe in Somerville or Cambridge coming up. Okay. I don't know. I can look real quick. Yeah. The New England chapter is so geographically huge, which I didn't even realize. Yeah. Sometimes these workshops come up and I give them to associate trainers and they're like, yeah, that's 2.5 hours away. I'm like, don't do that. Don't drive 2.5 hours away. Yeah. Let me see. I can pull it up right here. There we go. If you have a second, I'll just check this real quick. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So where did you say that you saw one? I think I saw one that's like Cambridge or Somerville maybe, or Newton. Okay. Let me see. So was it a coach? Was it a coach workshop? There was one double goal coach. Yeah. I saw. Okay. There's one right now. Okay. The ones that are coming up sooner than later. There's a couple next week, but they already have associate trainers at them. Okay. There's one at Fenway High School. I don't know where that is. Oh, yeah. That actually would be convenient. That's coming up on the 22nd. That's close. That's next Wednesday. There is one coming up on the 28th in Buxton. I don't know where that is. Oh, that's Buxton, Massachusetts. I don't know where that is either. Yeah. There's another one in Durham, New Hampshire. That's probably not close to you. Not super close. Let me see. Let me keep looking. There's one in Belmont, Massachusetts. Okay. That might be doable. Okay. Yeah, I'll send you the list and just take a look and see what you think works for you. There's also, I mean, there's a lot of workshops listed that aren't double goal coaching for winning in life lessons. That's the one that you're certified in right now. There's other ones that are on the list that if they work better for you, I mean, and you have the time and you want to, we can always get you like up to date on that one, because it's the same principles. It's just basically a little bit different in terms of the one like developing coach workshop for high school coaches. So it's not that much different, but it does have a little bit of a different twist on it. Okay. And then the workshop for the athletes is more of just how comfortable are you talking to them. And it's a lot more interaction. High school kids could care less what you want, what you talk about. They just want to be doing and talking. And so it's a lot more of interactive activities, things like that. So if that's something you're interested in and there's a workshop coming up that's not the regular double gold coach one, you can let me know and we can, try to get you prepped for that, or even just to observe. You're welcome to go out and observe any workshop that you want to. which I
Okay.
would highly recommend.
Yeah.
So yeah, so congratulations. I'm going to certify you as an associate trainer, and then that'll
Cool.
plug you into the system that you can look for. I'll send you the workshops that are coming up, and you let me know which ones work for you, and
Perfect.
we'll get you out there. As I
Great.
said, there's no substitute for actually doing it. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have complete confidence. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, thank you so much. I will follow you up with an email right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.